This excerpt was taken from the Full and Bloom interview with Great White guitarist Mark Kendall. You can listen to the entire interview at fullandbloom.com. Click the link in the description. Where did you guys record that Out of the Night EP?
In Redondo Beach. It was a studio called Total Access, owned by a fellow called Wynn Davis, who's an engineer in his own right, done a lot of things. Really, really good engineer.
That name is on Shot in the Dark, isn't it? In Wynn Davis? Yeah.
He engineered that, I believe, and he also has worked with Dokken. I believe he did a couple solo albums of Dokken, and he's done a ton of things, you know, EO and all sorts of stuff.
Oh, okay. And did he engineer Out of the Night, or did Michael engineer that?
No, Michael Wagner did the whole thing. Him and Dokken, he engineered it, and Dokken kind of produced the EP. Then the first full-length album, again, we had Michael Wagner.
I always kind of trip out on the whole Don Dokken thing, because at this point, Don Dokken isn't anybody, and I had recently interviewed Pete Holmes from Black and Blue, and they had a big Dokken connection as well, pre-contract, you know, before their record contract. And I mean, he hadn't really done anything yet, so how does this connection come with Don Dokken?
I met him in 1975 in another band, and he was in a band called Airborne, so we were friends from way back then. When he got Lynch and started to get his band going, Alan Niven did him a really big favor, and Alan was from England, and he worked for Virgin Records for 5 years. So when he came out here and started working for an independent label called Enigma, who signed Motley Crue, Berlin, and they would sign bands and then sell them off to big labels. And Dokken, I guess, was looking for management, and Niven introduced Don to Peter Mensch and Cliff Burnstein, and they became, who were Def Leppard's guys, and they became Dokken's managers. So when Niven was, you know, they signed Berlin, and Niven was looking for a rock band, and asked Don, you know, who's one of the better bands around. I'm really interested in getting a rock band on this label, Enigma. And he said, Dante Fox is what we were called at the time.
Sure.
So I guess Alan, and I didn't know this until way later, he came and saw us and didn't like it. And he goes, okay, maybe I missed something. I'm going to go again. So he went and saw us again. It still wasn't hearing it. So he told Don, he goes, I don't know about these guys. You know, I've seen them twice, and, you know, I'm just not seeing it. He goes, dude, you're missing it. You're missing it. He goes, I'm going to go with you, because we were playing the Whiskey in Hollywood. And so Don went with them, and they went down to see us. And on the encore, and this is, I didn't find this out for quite a while, you got to realize, but on the encore, we played No Doctor by Humble Pie. And that sold Niven, you know, like, I see the possibilities here, you know? So who knows, man? You know, it's like every band has a story, right? You know,
and
it's not always the perfect scenario with the demo tape and the 8x10, you know.
Is this still when, like, Don Costa and Tony Richards are in the band?
At the time, it was a guy called Lorne Black. Costa, I actually got him a gig in Ozzy through George Lynch. George Lynch called me one day and said he was in Dallas and he was auditioning for Ozzy, and they need a bass player. He goes, that bass player you guys had would be perfect. And I called Costa. He went there. He'd already quit our band like about 3 weeks prior. The way I understood it, I thought George had that gig locked down. But what happened was, when they saw Costa and his long, hideous black hair and his image and everything, he pretty much got the gig instantly. Well, Jake was auditioning too. When they saw those two guys together, they said, that's the band. Because Lynch had cut his hair pretty short, and, you know, he had it dyed. It was almost like the skunk dude.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
Almost new age looking.
Those are my favorite Ozzy releases, Bark at the Moon and Ultimate Sin. Or I love the Jake era better. I know everybody's like, oh, it's Randy Rhoads, and I get it. I like Randy Rhoads too, but Jake was my favorite era in the band. I just saw even the other day, I was watching something where he talked about how Don got fired, and it was like at the US Festival. You saw that where he, like, Ozzy headbutted him?
I've known that story, everything but the headbutt. I've known that story forever. The only thing different about the story I heard was that he walked up to a helicopter here to fly over a fence, and they told him he was out of the band. That's the first time I heard that he went to the bus, and they told him. But I knew that they got Daisley the night before and everything, and Daisley was going to do the gig. But what I didn't know, and I knew they told Costa at the last minute, but what I heard was that Costa was upstaging Ozzy while he was singing. Like, in other words, he was in front of him, and Sharon called him into an office and said, not mean at all, just asked him to, be behind Ozzy when he's singing. You can go ahead and go up front or whatever when he's not singing and you're jamming or whatever, but when he sings, don't go walk in front of him. And what I heard was a few gigs later, he told the crew guy that he goes, I still do it, but I do it when they're not looking. That crew guy went straight to Sharon and told her. And so that's the reason I heard for the very rude firing. That makes sense to me now when I heard about Ozzy headbutting him, because Sharon probably told Ozzy that he said that. I don't think they just, out of the blue, just got all cruel and just fired him for no reason,
Was he doing the cheese grater stuff on the knuckles with you guys?
No, Don is a true bass player to his core. He just took everything to the extreme when he was in our band. He used to just play bass. He was a big Geddy Lee fan. He really knew how to play. I mean, this guy studied bass players like nobody's business, and he could really, really play. Played with his fingers. He was a monster bass player. I told him, I go, because he was so reserved, he would just stand there and he didn't move a muscle. And I go, dude, can you move around more? Because it looks like you hate what you're doing or something. And he just took it to levels that just were way beyond what I was asking. Before I knew it, this guy had like the Queen Mary anchors wrapped around him. He had cheese graters, and he just went basket weaver, and he kind of quit. Well, he still played his bass, but he went all crazy. He was doing like solos with a pickaxe and bleeding all over the place. He got hepatitis like twice. So he went absolutely bonkers. Had he been in the band when Niven came down, he would have refused to go see us again. It was bad. But the guy, when he played bass, I mean, he could really play. I'm serious. He's awesome.
He didn't really do anything after Ozzy, did he?
He actually just totally disappeared. But I can tell you this: when he was in our band, he was kind of like a business leader. He got all our gigs. Really worked hard to get the band, as far as it could go. So he was real good with the business end, and a super great guy.
I think I'm still the only one that's ever interviewed Tony Richards.
Oh, really? Me, him, and Don all lived together in a house. We bought it. My mom was a real estate agent. She made it to where we didn't have to do a down payment. We didn't last long, but Tony was a great guy. Really, he's kind of a natural drummer. The funny thing is, and I've never played with anybody quite like him, he's a really excellent drummer. He feels the music, but he can't play it the same way 2 times in a row. But it might be, it's going to be good twice in a row, you know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
It's always going to be good. But if you're looking for him to repeat, drum fills and stuff like that, he's really not that type of drummer. He was more of an awesome
just feeling it
skills,
out.
Awesome skills, but not a guy who gets his parts all together and does it.
I liked his drumming, and I loved that first W.A.S.P. record, and I thought his drumming was appropriate for that first Great White record.
Great drummer, and I was really happy to see him get right in W.A.S.P. I didn't want to see him, just go off and not do anything. So that shows you he had skills. He went out there and he got a gig. And
so to part with him, the reasoning behind it was just that he didn't really do the same thing twice?
Well, here's the deal. We all partied down, we're young guys.
Sure.
But he was kind of getting drunk at the gigs, like before we played. It was getting like a little out of hand. And Gary Holland was like following us around going, I'll blow that guy away. I'll blow that guy away. So Costa goes, we should get this guy. He kind of sort of talked me into it. But I can tell you, skill level wise, Tony was definitely had the upper hand. Gary was a great guy though.
side.